Welcome to Irresistible You. I'm your host, Karen Seltz, and I am fresh back from Colombia, from Cartagena, for a Dr. Joe Dispenza week-long advanced meditation retreat, and I am vibrating high. If you are new to me, there's really only three things that you need to know. The first one is that I have overcome depression, anxiety, addiction, and very low self-esteem. I lived in self-beat up for way too long. And I know what it takes. I know what the journey is like and how quickly it can set in that you go back to your default programming. So if you are anywhere along any of those states, just know I've been where you are and there's hope. The second thing you need to know is that I consider my greatest superpower to be that of a divine mirror. And what I mean by that is I have the ability to see people as the divine sees them and to reflect it back to them until they get it for themselves. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't see the truth of who I was. Thank you for reflecting it. And it's super fun. And the third thing that you need to know about me is that I am uncensored in my approach. I channel. So I get myself out of the way. I start with a simple prayer, get me out of the way and speak through me. So I never know what's going to come. So it's a lot of fun for me too. It's always a surprising journey. So I'm so glad that you've joined. I am super excited to talk about this. I geek out on all things quantum meditation and the amazingness and juiciness of what is available to all of us. All of us, no one is special, and that delights me. So if you've been following the show for a while, I've talked about some of my experiences of what I've been able to create by doing this work. And this is my third week-long retreat that I've gone to. And I am always amazed at the depth of understanding that comes out of a new one. It's just really funny to me. I'm like, I don't remember him saying that before. And I actually took the same notebook that I took last time. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. It's just written a little bit differently. So it's really fun to see my evolution and to share that with you because it's so easy to go back to default programming. It's so easy. One of the big things I took away this time was Dr. Joe said that he used to do this, if he would find his mind wandering, he would start all the way over his meditation. And I did that today. It's really funny. So the fifth time I was restarting, I look and I was 20 minutes in to a 90-minute meditation. I'm like, oh, well, what else do I have to do? Right? Like, what else? And I didn't realize how often my mind was drifting until I gave it this target, like pay attention. Anytime my mind drifts, I get to start over again. I'm like, oh, there it is again. And he says that it only took him a couple of days to rein his monkey mind in. So stay with me on the journey. I'll let you know. Today was day one for me of restarting. So I got to meditate for about 2 hours today. And by the fifth time, I believe it was fifth, maybe sixth, who knows, of restarting, I was much more focused already. So we shall see. So one of the things that's been really amazing to me is the science that is involved in Dr. Joe's work. And one of the stats that really sticks out to me is they measured the blood of advanced meditators. Now, these are the people that do Dr. Joe's meditations every single day. And they didn't really say, or I didn't catch how long they'd been doing that. Now, personally, I've been following him for 2.5 years. I've been meditating daily for 7 months. I haven't missed a day since June 19th, so 7 months straight without missing a day. So they've taken the blood of these advanced meditators and they expose cancer cells to their blood. And cancer cells don't flourish. They don't multiply in the presence of 84% of the people's blood that are advanced meditators. I'm like, wow, I find that miraculous. Like cancer, if I keep doing the work, it essentially cannot live in my body. And I lost my mother at a pretty young age to cervical cancer. And, it's in the back of my mind, right? Like, is this going to happen? And I get tested for it. But now I'm like, well, I get to prevent it by just focusing on wholeness and health and doing the work. So for me, that's like a great reason to keep doing it. I'm like, yes, let's do it. But I want to talk about some fun stuff. So one of the things that Dr. Joe said is when you make contact with the divine, or you actually reach pure consciousness, you're going to come back to a universe that looks almost exactly the same, but it's slightly different. And I was reminded, I'm super playful, if you don't know that, of the book or the magazine when we were kids called Highlights. And one of my favorite things was the two pictures side by side, and it said circle the differences. And I'm like, oh, we get to gamify this. Like, okay, what's different when I come back? Like, what's different in this universe? So when he said that, and when it actually sunk in, I'm like, okay, so how am I going to know that I've created something new or that I've made contact with the divine? And I'm like, show me a blue butterfly, but bring it in a way that I would never expect it. And then we went to lunch. And when we came back, they started playing music, and I went to the dance floor, and this woman grabs my hand, starts dancing with me. And I look, and there on her shirt is a blue butterfly. And I'm like, oh gosh. And I told her, I'm like, you were my angel sent from above as a sign. And she hugged me, and we were very excited. So I also invite you to play with this stuff, because there are lots of people healing their bodies from very serious health conditions. And I don't have any of those, thank God. And I love this work, and I love to play. So after my second week-long advanced retreat, I was going the very next day. I had done this walking meditation called Body Electric. And in this particular meditation, I feel electricity running through my body. It is coursing through me. My body shakes and does all kinds of fun and exciting things. And there was a guy that was going to drive a group of us women to these cenotes, or caves, in Mexico, in Cancun. And he had rented an electric car. And it had sat in the garage, the parking garage of the hotel, essentially all week. And the battery was dead. So he was saying, oh, I can't really drive you until I get this figured out. And I said, well, let us start your car. And he said, what do you mean? I said, surely in the infinite realm of all possibility, there is a potential for us to start your car. And he just like poo-pooed the idea. He's like, meh. And he's like, let me talk to the valet. So he talks to the valet, and the valet says, well, you're going to need to call a cab. And I said, give me the keys. So finally he relented. So he gave me the keys to his car, and another woman and I went down there. We popped the hood. We do this, like we're generating electricity, and we hold our hands over the battery. For literally, it was 5 to 10 seconds max. And then the valet comes with jumper cables with his own car. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I grab the cables and I put him on this guy's battery, and the valet grabs the other end and he goes, zzz. He's like, this car has so much power, it doesn't need a jump. So I get in and I push the button, and it immediately starts. And I'm like, oh. So that is how I like to play, because I believe in something called the ladder of believability. So if you play in the quantum with something that's inconsequential, something that doesn't matter to you, you're not invested. I wasn't invested in whether this car started or not, but I thought, why not? Let's play. Let's see. And I often ask myself this question, well, what else is possible? Because I believe we tap into so little of what's available to us. So instead of saying like, that's not going to work, like, well, why not? How can I? What else is possible? And I also ask myself a lot, is this the most empowering story I can tell? Well, now it is, right? Like, I got the power. So the next day, still in Cancun, I had breakfast with this guy that was leaving, and I walked with him to his room to get his suitcase, and his hotel key was, the room was turning red, or it was turning red. It was demagnetized. I'm like, come on, bring it. So I do this, and I'm like, okay, try it. tries it. He tried it like 10 times before that and it kept being red. So he tries it first time, it's green. He's like, oh my gosh. So I have built my faith with these little things. So then why can't I create $100,000 in my business next week? I don't know. Why can't I create perfect health? Why can't I cure COVID in one meditation, which I have done? Why not? Because I built my faith with these things that don't matter. So play with these little things. Like maybe you're at the grocery store and there's a long line and you create someone opening up a register or someone letting you go in front of them. I don't know. Just play. Let the universe take care of you and bring you fun things. So there were so many beautiful serendipities there. What I love about this work is seeing grown men opening their hearts and crying in front of other people or embracing other men. It's so beautiful. And I had this experience where I've really learned to tune into my gut and just ask, like, okay, is this the best course for me? Or what would you have me do? And when the registration opened up, I was on the Facebook group. There's a Facebook group for all the attendees of each retreat. And I found this woman that was looking for a roommate. And she was just a yes for me. It was just from the beginning, it was like a yep, yes. I had no question. I didn't even look at any of the other responses to my request for a roommate. It was 100% her. And she actually flew into Phoenix and we met in the airport on our way to Cartagena. And it was instant, the hug this woman gave me. For example, I hug heart to heart. So instead of going to the left, I go to the right. So we are heart to heart. And you can feel the resonance. You can feel this. It's like a softening. And I told a lot of people at the retreat, when I hug people, it is my intention that they feel like they are hugging the divine. And in so doing, they're hugging their higher self and realizing their own divinity just by hugging me. That is my intention every time I hug someone. So I'm not like pat someone and move on. I hold people. I hold them in and I feel that resonance. I close my eyes. I go dig in. I'm like, and then what happens with almost everybody is our breathing synchronizes. Like there's all of a sudden like and the breathing synchronizes. Well, this woman, we had the exact same thing. Like she had the same intention, it felt like. So when she hugged me in the Phoenix airport, it was like I was hugging myself, like I was hugging God. I don't know. It was incredible. Like everything else was gone. There was no other distractions, no other world. And the women that we attracted, it was such a beautiful and eclectic mix. And the way it all came together, I couldn't have organized it. I couldn't have. 6 of us from all different countries. And we laughed harder than I've ever laughed in my whole life. Every single time we were together, we were laughing and we were playing. And it reminds me of how much work I've done to get to this point where I'm attracting people that aren't complaining. They're not looking for what's wrong. They're looking for what's right and how they can improve their experience, how they can connect to the divine, how they can connect to one another, how they can add to one another's lives and enrich them, and how they can connect to pure joy and bliss. So think about that. If you're attracting people that are complaining, are you willing to look at yourself? Are you willing to look and say, where am I that? Because I did attract somebody who was complaining and I called her forward. I'm like, interesting way to see that. How else could you look at it? What did you learn? And I'm asking questions. I'm not saying you're an idiot because you're complaining or you're below me. It's nothing like that. I don't have that type of feeling, but I notice it because it used to be me. I used to be complaining. I used to try to get attention by being a victim. And I tell you, it is so much more fun to be a creator than a victim. And you cannot be both. You can't. It's like you're either pregnant or you're not. You're either a creator or you're a victim. Which do you choose? And I talk about this sometimes, A Course in Miracles. If you don't like what you have, choose again. If you don't like what's in front of you, choose again. If you don't like who you're being, excuse yourself and choose again. Like, I like to call myself out on things. If I'm being a jerk, I'm like, oh man, just a minute. I just forgot the truth of who I am. Like, you did not deserve that. You do not deserve that. Let me take two. Cut. Take two. I mean, just play. Who cares? We all forget. But how long are you going to forget? I mean, it's up to you. So for me, this whole process has everything to do with shortening that period of time that I forget and coming back to the truth of who I am. When I forget, it's pretty obvious to me because I feel it in my body. I'm like, ooh, something's off, right? It feels icky because I'm experiencing emotions that are no longer common for me. I am joyful most of the time. And when I'm not, it doesn't feel good. And I have luckily developed a low tolerance for it. I'm like, oh, something's off. And I don't choose it. I don't choose to stay there. And I'm going to give you another example. Okay. So when I was at the retreat, this guy invited me to this dinner he was hosting. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. He was hiring a private chef. And then I had lunch with him and some other people the next day. And he told a story and my body was like I literally went flying backward like a hell no. So immediately I canceled. I'm like, no, I never, ever, ever do anything I don't want to do anymore. And my roommate was going to go with me. And she's like, oh, I didn't want to go either. Thank you for canceling. I'm like, I just don't live that way anymore. And guess what? I don't have any resentments and I'm healthy and I'm happy because one of the things in A Course in Miracles is God would not ask his son to sacrifice. And I'm his son. I am not here to sacrifice. I'm here to create. If I sacrifice, what does that make me? A victim. No, that's not where I live. I don't choose it. I choose again. I choose to be a creator. So my questions for you are, what are the questions that you ask yourself when you come up against it? Like you're triggered and something seems so real. It seems like a fact, an indisputable fact. And you're like, this is how it is. Do you question yourself? And if you don't, are you willing to? Are you happy with what you have? Are you happy? Are you free? Are you joyful? Are you feeling creative and expressive and generous? Because if you're not, you are living in the emotions of survival. And that's no way for a creator to live, right? Like you have a choice. So it's a matter of catching it. When you go unconscious, just notice and say, oh my gosh, I went unconscious. I'm so glad I caught it. Now, most people, when they start this process, they're like, oh, there I go again, going unconscious. I'm such an idiot. Or their self-talk is really crap. So don't do that. Play and celebrate that you caught it, because that's a beginning. Like you have to celebrate that you catch it. I mean, you don't have to do anything, but it's more fun. And we're here to be joyful and to have fun, right? So that's what I do. I catch myself in all kinds of little things, my cons, I call them, like the stories that I believe to be true. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I caught it. There I go, thinking I'm smarter than everybody again, or whatever it is. Like trying to be right, trying to get the last word in, whatever your thing happens to be. Just notice. And it's almost like a neutral thing. Don't give it any charge. If you play with it, it becomes like, oh, cool, I caught it. And then you get to make a choice. Like, who do I choose to be in this moment? I choose to be divine. I choose to be in truth. I choose to be generous. I choose to be open-hearted. I choose to be loving. I choose to be joyful. I choose to be free. And I know all those. They're like in my body. I don't have to think about them. They're just in there because I practice them over and over. And one of the funny things that Dr. Joe was saying often when people got frustrated that they didn't connect to the divine or their mind wandered, he's like, you're just not that good yet. Keep practicing. I'm like, yeah, okay. I've been practicing for 7 months straight, and a couple years off and on, and I'm not that good yet. That's okay. One thing also that really, really sunk in for me this time was to spend time in my think box. And what he talks about with the think box is this is a place where you work out, okay, where did I lose focus? What did I do really well that I want to bring with me next time? And what would I like to improve upon? So you're working that out before you get into meditation. When you're in meditation, he calls that your play box. And I love that because I love to play. So also like setting an intention, like, okay, what's my intention for this meditation? I hadn't been doing that up until now. I'm like, okay, well, this up levels the game. It definitely up levels the game. So what's your intention before you meditate, or what's your meditation what's your intention before you go out into the world? And I'm going to give you an example. I was coaching this transformational leadership program many, many years ago, and I was the example in front of the room. And I set this intention to create a committed monogamous relationship in like with some other qualifiers like loving and whatever in 90 days. And I hadn't dated in like 2 years. I was on a fast. I took a break. So I was consciously creating a relationship. So before I went out, I work from home and I go sometimes to Starbucks to work just to be out among people because I'm an extrovert. And I'm like, okay, my intention before I go is to be open. That's it, just to be open and approachable. And I was working, I was at my computer. My head was down and I got asked out twice. I'm like, what is this intention stuff? It really works. So what's your intention? Now, I wasn't specific about who asked me out. So I got to refine that a little later. But really, intention is so powerful because our thoughts become things. Yes, thoughts become things. Isn't that fun? So watch what you think. Watch, pay attention. If you're thinking about the asshole who cut you off, you're going to create more of what? More assholes, right? If you think about the nice person that held the door for you, and you're like, oh, thank you, and you're grateful for that, guess what you're going to create more of? More things to be grateful for. So what is it that is present for you right now in your life that you are truly grateful for? Maybe it's something you've been overlooking. Maybe it's the fact that you have a really comfortable bed, or maybe it's your beautiful eyes. I don't know. There are so many things. And I know there's a ton of literature and a lot of people talk about being grateful, but really, gratitude means you've already received something. It's done. So if you could be grateful ahead of the event, you are literally drawing it to you. Whatever you think is possible for you, guess what? You're right. Wasn't that the Henry Ford saying, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So it's exactly like that. Anyways, I'm super excited to be back with my daughters and to put it into work, because it's really easy to be happy and joyous when you're in this bubble of 1,700 people that are opening their hearts and hugging one another. What do you do when you go back to life? Life as usual. Set an intention. Do not miss a day. So the reason I've been practicing only for 7 months, when my first retreat was November 2020, so 7 months without missing a day, is because I missed a day. That day became 2 days. That day became 3 days. And I made up the story, I don't have an hour to meditate. I don't have an hour, so I'm not going to do it. And I called it booty calling Dr. Joe, which, yeah, that's just what I called it. So when I got sick, I'd be like, Dr. Joe, could you heal me? And I would meditate. And that's what I was talking about. I healed COVID in one meditation. It was during that time. I wasn't meditating every day. I was like, oh, I'm sick. Can you heal me? I got something else, and it was really bad. It was called valley fever. It's something that's in valleys like Phoenix, and it's a fungus you get from breathing the soil. And it attacks people who don't have a very good immune system. Well, I wasn't meditating, and it attacked my muscles. And I had the markers in my blood for muscular dystrophy. They were 20 times normal. My arms were like sausages because my muscles were atrophying under the skin and releasing liquid. And I could barely walk. My legs kept giving out. I had about 2% of my normal strength and maybe 5% of my normal stamina. And I'm like, oh. And the course was like this antifungal treatment for 90 days. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know what to do. When I had to take a nap after showering because I was so exhausted. So within 2 meditations, my strength and stamina was back to about 65%, and my blood work was completely normal. And then I just kept doing the meditations until I got better, and then I stopped. But this time, no, something really hit me after my second retreat, and it was, no, I will not go back, because I wasn't happy. I was not happy. I was just going through the motions and kind of surviving. And something struck me like, no, I cannot, I will not, I choose to never, ever miss a day again. My happiness, my future, my children's future, like the people that I'm here to serve, it all matters way too much than my stupid excuses, because they were lame. Nothing is more important than my connection to my divinity. And it took what it took for me to get that. But I implore you, like, look deep inside, like, is your life that much different than it was a year ago? And what's going to happen if you go another year and going in the same direction? Who are you going to be? Are you going to be full of regrets? Or are you going to be full of, holy shit, look what I've accomplished. Look who I've become. And I was so disappointed in myself in so many areas. And I'm like, no, I'm freaking done with it. I'm just done. And I made that decision, and it's just not even a question in my mind. Like, of course I'm going to meditate. Of course I am, because I love myself that much. I do. I just am so in love with myself. You know, it's weird to say, but I want you to be there. I want you to be so in love with yourself that you would never, ever miss a day. And I call it like my date with the divine. I would never miss a date with the divine. I just wouldn't. So that is what's possible for you. Thank you so much for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'll see you right here next week.